Richard, I mean, you got all these motorcycles in here. Do you have a favorite? I mean, or are they all favorites?
Well, they're kind of all favorites, but this happens to be, there again, I think I was telling you earlier that I specialize in machines that was built by Ignaz Schwinn in Chicago. Well, this is one of his machines right here. Believe me, it looks like a brand new one now, but this thing was really, really a total wreck. It took about 1.5 years to redo it. It's got 4 horsepower. It has a belt drive. It has a battery ignition. This is before magnetos, things like that. You had a battery on it and a coil. When the battery got too low, you had to put a new battery in. But the battery would last you almost a whole season because it used very little current to spark the spark plug. The controls on it, it was before the days of cables. If you'll notice here, things are turning. See like down here on the carburetor? See, there's no cable. That's all actually little ball joints and linkages. This was before the days of the cables. Over here, this is your hand clutch here. And you see this big old leather belt here. Now, when you move this forward, watch this down here. Bingo, it's locked in. Now your belt is tight. Now that's like engaging your clutch. And believe me, that won't slip. The only problem you might have is if it rained, you know what happens to leather when it gets wet. It stretches. Yeah. So then you were in big trouble. But as soon as it dried out, it would tighten back up again. But anyway, that's the way the clutch works.
Now, if you had to stop in a hurry, what would you have to do?
Just like a bicycle. Go backwards on your pedals. Because the rear end in here is like a bicycle. Over here, you got 2 valves. One that says gasoline, one says oil. If you open up this valve, it will allow fuel to flow down here in the carburetor. If you open up the one that says oil, it would allow oil to drip, not run, to drip into the engine. Your intake valve, this is called atmospheric. You know, there's no push rods going to it. It's all out here in the open. That is very, very old technology from the early 1900s. The exhaust valve's down here, and it is actually driven by a camshaft. Down here is the spark, the points. They're inside that. Now, if I turn this control here, you notice that turn? What that's doing, that's advancing and retarding your spark.
How fast would a motorcycle like this travel?
Well, on modern roads like we have today, probably 40 miles an hour, 40, 45. I sure wouldn't want to be on it at that speed.
Yeah, but absolutely. But, you know, the roads they didn't have much roads.
No,
so
I'm talking about in the early 1900s, they were just dirt roads.
So
you couldn't drive over 20, 15, 20.
So it's geared low. It's geared low to...
That's right.
But it beats pedaling a bicycle.
It beats pedaling a bicycle. That's right. This was really, in 1910, this was really high technology.
How much would a motorcycle brand new like this be in 1910?
Oh, about $175.
That was a lot of money.
Well, when you consider most people was earning 25 cents a day, that was a lot of money. Yeah. Yeah, I figured it out once. Let's see, $175 would be probably close to $1,000 in today's money. So these were pretty expensive.
If you owned one of these, you had to be a little bit of a mechanic to keep it going, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. You had to do a certain amount of maintenance you did yourself. And you just, and the adjustments you had done yourself. It wasn't like a modern day machine, you know. Motorcycle guys were considered, and they were in a league of their own. Must remember, motorcycles, not only, well, back in these days, it wasn't play. Telephone companies used to use motorcycles. Their linemen used to go out. Police departments used them. The post office delivered mail with them. So they wasn't a toy. They never really got to be a toy until about in the 30s. Then they became a toy.
There's 4 bikes right here that they're all
over 90 years old.
They look more like bicycles than motorcycles.
A big bicycle.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
Big, heavy bicycle. Yes.
They're closer related to bicycles than motorcycles, really. The modern motorcycle today. But these are all pretty rare machines. But there's over 200 kinds of motorcycles made in this country, from 1900 up until By 1930, 32, there wasn't only a couple bikes left. This one here is pretty famous, or built by a very famous man. You've heard of Glenn Curtis, the aviation pioneer. Well, he built motorcycles. He got into airplanes later on. Now, him and Glenn Curtis and the Wright brothers used to fight all the time. Yeah. They had lawsuits that lasted clear up into the 20s. But anyway, Glenn built this machine here in Hammersport, New York. And it's called a Curtis Marvel, a single cylinder. And if you'll notice down here on the engine, it's got overhead valves. This is one of your very first overhead valve engines. It's there again for 1910. This was very high tech, and his bikes were very fast, and they were high quality.
He used to race them too. I know he did.
He sure did. He raced them. And Curtis, this here, there's only about 5 Curtises in existence, and this is one of them. Now this bike next to us here, this black one, is a Pierce Arrow, like the Pierce Arrow car. This is a Pierce Arrow motorcycle.
Same company.
Same company, and it's a single.
What year are we talking?
1913.
Amazing.
And there again, all of these have well, except for the Sears, they all have a belt drive. You see the big old V-belt here, leather. And this has a V-belt leather on it too. One of the unique features of both these machines, the frame was big enough to hold the fuel. You notice that? Mm-hmm. Like in this one here, this was your oil tank, and it's the same thing on the Pierce. This right here part held the oil for it. So it's very unique.
Back to this bike here, you're saying that this one right here is one of 5 in existence.
Did you ever hear of the Art of the Motorcycle the Guggenheim put on in New York back a few years ago? It was very, very popular. Thousands and thousands of people. They call these motorcycles art now because of the way they were manufactured, the way they were made. Well, anyway, this bike, the Guggenheim, went all over the world, really. The early Guggenheim did. The second Guggenheim was called the Art of the Motorcycle, and they borrowed this machine. This bike has been on display in Memphis, Tennessee, and it's also been in Orlando, Florida. In fact, right after I got it done, they borrowed it. I didn't even have it for a year. So really, I got it back last August, so I've only had it since then. But the Pierce was a good machine. Percy Pierce, who's old man Pierce's son, wanted to build a motorcycle because his daddy built the Pierce automobile. So they built this single-cylinder motorcycle, and they also built a shaft-driven inline 4. And they're very collectible, and they're a very nice machine. The red and white one is a Sears. The Sears called it a Dreadnought 9. Dreadnought means something big, like a big ship. 9 means 9 horsepower. There again, like the cycle car, this has a Spackey engine built in Indianapolis.
Now, did Sears manufacture it, or they market it?
They market it, just like they do today. Mm-hmm. This machine was built in New York by a company called the Eagle Motorcycle Company. And it's a fast machine, not real easy to handle, has no transmission, but it has a clutch on it, but it only has 1 speed forward. Kind of like these belt drives, they only have 1 speed forward. Now the green bike here is a Reading Standard. They're again made in Reading, Pennsylvania. The Reading Standard Company, you notice the RS on the tank. This was made this is 1913, and this machine is 1912, I believe. And so this machine was made about the time the Titanic went down. But it's beautiful. It's very well restored, good runner, and it has a gas light on it. It's got a belt drive. It's a very good machine. A lot of nickel plating on it. All these bikes. This is not chrome. I didn't mention that before. It's all nickel. Chrome wasn't even invented till the late 30s. That bike right there, that is a Cleveland. There again, the same name of the town it came from. That is a Cleveland 4-cylinder. Now, there's not a lot of those around. It's a nice looking little bike, but not really high quality. There's not a lot of them left today. They never lasted long, but that makes them more of a collector's item. And that bike there is come from, like I said, come from Cleveland, Ohio. The engine has a 61-inch cubic inch motor. 61 inches equates to 1,000 cc.